Hello everyone and welcome to the SBK betting podcast, a Royal Ascot special. Yes, that's right, dust off your top hats and get out those dresses at just about knee length as we're ready for the biggest 5 days of flat turf action and the mighty theatre that is Ascot Racecourse. And while the story that will be making all the headlines will be Frankie Dettori's final Ascot, we are, as always, in search for winners and winners only. And our law fans will be delighted that we come into this in quite good order, I think, Tom and Ross with me. And yeah, I have to say, best shape the podcast has ever been. I say this, touching the wood, but it's been a very fruitful period in the build up to this meeting, which is always a nice place to be in.
Yeah, I'm sure every podcast will say they're flying at this point in time. They want the views, but generally we are actually flying. We're picking winners every single week, and it's been a fantastic 6 to 8 week spell. Hopefully it continues because, you know, Royal Ascot is the crescendo of the flat season. It's the best 5 days, in my opinion, of the whole year. So I'm really looking forward to it, Jess.
Fighting talk. I know, Ross, the last time we were all here together, we were previewing Cheltenham, and I know you are a jumps fan and a traditional jumps fan through and through, but we know how much work you put into that winners and waiting and juveniles to watch column. So I'm sure you've been enjoying this build-up period and seeing all the work that you put into it come to life in action.
Yeah, and the great thing about that is that I started it, 2 years ago. So the first lot now are 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds. So yeah, and I still love horses. I love racing, so it doesn't take a big stretch to get me excited about Ascot, I have to admit.
Okay, well, let's get going because we've got a brilliant first day of action, the Tuesday. It's always, I believe, the best day's racing that the week has. We've got, we're going to go through this podcast with highlighting all those best races, but Tuesday you can't get away from three. You have to focus on the three Group 1s. They are special, and the Queen Anne always kicks off the week in good style. And over the years we've been so spoiled with the likes of Frankel, Bailly. This year it's a slightly a different feeling. We don't have the likes of Order of Australia and the horses that come in and out every year, the ones Real World, the ones that we've seen year after year. There's a slightly different feel, different sense. It's like a shift, and Modern Games might be the key here. Is he the new up-and-coming Millar of the turf division? And well, he proved that he can do it on home surface last time out in the Lockinge, and he does come back, TC, I know you're a big Modern Games fan, to the place where he was beaten by Bayside Boy in the QE2. But I feel like we've learnt a lot about him. I feel like he's sort of growing up, he's learning, he's becoming the real horse that you've always seen him to be over in the likes of America. But what did you learn about him in the Lockinge?
I don't think I learned anything because I thought he was a horse to beat that day. Actually, one thing I did like, he was gritty. Like, he looked like he was beaten 2 furlongs from home, and he showed not only does he have the speed, but he also has the tenacity to win at the top level. I thought his Lockinge victory was very good. Don't think it was the best Lockinge of all time. But I also think that Charlie Appleby's horses were in a down period, and probably still are, but they're just starting to peak. I'm sure June is going to be the month where we see Charlie Appleby's horses really come to life. The last 3 years, Charlie Appleby struck at 26% on the dot for June. So this year, he's around 14% right now. He's definitely going to peak. And I think Royal Ascot might be the time to do that. I've got nothing against Modern Games. I love the horse. He's a short price, around 7 to 4. But I'm going to take him on just because of that price. It's a competitive race. 4-year-olds have won 5 of the last 6 editions. So, he's a 4-year-old. He hits the trend. But so are Inspiral and Native Trail. Inspiral is a horse I have never got right. Yeah. Which is interesting because she's been super prolific. She's won 6 of 8 starts. So quite clearly I'm losing money on her. She goes well fresh. She's won first up both years. This is her toughest task though on her reappearance. Maybe she can win, but I can't side with her. So it's got to be Native Trail for me. And I know people are going to say that comeback run at Newmarket was so bad. How can you back him against the likes of Modern Games and Inspiral? But he was facing Mutasabek, who's a first-time up specialist at Newmarket, course specialist there as well. And he probably just wasn't firing. He was coming off a layoff. Appleby's horses were definitely not firing at that point either. And I think there was an excuse for Native Trail. I don't think he actually ran as badly as it looks on paper, given how well Mutasabek performed in the race. And he's the biggest price of the 3 that got a chance of winning. So, yeah, I'll take Native Trail.
Yeah, it's the kind of shrewd man's view at the moment with Native Trail. He was also a much better 2-year-old. And it's whether does he still retain that class, or has Modern Games just grown into a better older horse, and that's what we're trying to work out, isn't it? And Spiral is the interesting one, just quickly on that, because she has been seen to such good effect. When she's good, she's really good, but then the tardy start the day of the QE2 when she was behind the likes of Modern Games, but the ground was put into one side, and then it's also having to come, it'll be a big training performance if she comes and does it after such a long layoff. What has led you just to sort of, because I'm the same, just that close to picking her, why is it that you just said no over Native Trail?
Well, it's definitely a personal agenda I've got against Inspiral considering my bets, but no, I think she's going to run well because she goes well fresh, but she's never beaten horses of this calibre before. She won well in the Coronation Stakes first up last year, but the horse in second, Spenderella, who is a very good filly over in the US for Grand Motion, but she's still not top echelon. You know, she's not going to, not the horse echelon, because he was an absolute cracker, but she's nowhere near the standard of Modern Games and Native Trail. She'd be like infantry at Deauville, like she wouldn't win this race. And then, as you say, Ascot, last time in October, she was pretty poor. So, yes, the fast ground suit, she'll probably bounce back, but I don't think she's good enough to win.
So, just quickly, is it a price thing that you've gone against your favourite Modern Games and Inspiral?
Yeah, so not just price for Inspiral, but just price for Modern Games. I think it'll be there or thereabouts.
Okay, so Native Trail is around about 6-1. Will he come in? Will lots of people bounce onto this same feeling that he might just have needed that first run, second run after wind surgery as well? Ross, is there something in here, because we know, and I will be asking you this throughout the course of this week, that you are a value seeker. You don't like going from the obvious ones at the top, and we have to bear in mind that there have been horses in this race that have run massive races at double, triple figure prices. Accidental Agent won this race at 33-1. Is there something in here that we're missing?
I hope so, but first we just touch on this. This is the same Native Trail that when I tipped a couple of times last year, the WhatsApp group mocked me mercilessly.
Well, hold on. One of those was against Bailly. Do we need to touch on that?
Well, that's true.
That was one of your more crazy moments.
I'm with TC. I mean, I'm not as big a fan of Modern Games as he is, but I thought he was pretty laboured to win the Lockings last time. I wasn't overly impressed, and I think on quicker ground, if it is quicker ground, 13-8 is plenty short enough. I think he's the one to beat because he's been there and done it. Inspired, I'm the same as TC. I mean, I've got inconsistent written down here, and then when TC says she's won 6 out of 8, that's a bit unfair, but I just struggled to get a grip on her first up 248 days. On the straight track, I just wanted to be a bit gassy for all she was impressive in the Coronation last year. Native Trail, I just can't have. I mean, second start off a wind up, but last time I was looking for him first start on a wind up to stretch his neck down, and he's got this really high head carriage, and it didn't look any better to me. So it didn't look like a run that's going to have shown him that he can breathe. I still think he didn't. So I have to go up in the end. The laugh is going to start now, I'm sure. I have got one at a big price, and it's a horse I've always liked, Berkshire Shadow. He was a really good winner of the Coventry, and I was very taken after the Coventry that Andrew Balding said he's a big shadow of a horse and he'd be better 3-year-old, and he just wasn't. But I just wonder whether 3 wasn't the year he came to himself. So he was winless after the Coventry until 2 wins on your weather this winter, 7 furlongs and 8 furlongs and a mile, getting back to it. And then he finished really well behind Modern Games, I thought, in the Lockings. I think this stiffer track is going to suit him. And if he's just starting to get back to where he was, I thought 33-1, around about that, when he was just 2.5 lengths behind Modern Games. Quicker ground will suit him. This stiffer track will suit him. In a race where I can't go near the top cup in the market, I'll take him as a each way price to perhaps run into third or better.
Yeah, 33-1. Andrew Balding's in great form. He always talks about that this is such an important meeting for him. I really think there's a lot of emphasis, and we'll get to one of the leading lights for his strength. But just quickly, if you like Berkshire Shadow, why not Chindit? He was just ahead of him.
Just a horse I've never ever been able to get right, and I think he is very inconsistent. I think you put him up, didn't you, for the Lock-ins, and he ran a massive race. But you go back to his form, he does struggle to back up these runs, and so he wasn't difficult for me to overlook.
Okay, Berkshire Shadow, Native Trail. I think Modern Games is a safe call. It's quite a easy decision just based on how safe it is, but it's not a very brave decision. Chindit is one that I just think, yes, he hasn't been able to back up races in the past, but he did back up from his win at Ascot first time out last time to run an absolute blinder career best in the Lock-in. Might have just hit the front and got a little bit idle, so much so that he wanted to take off William Buick's hand. He's a funny one. He's definitely got his own character, but he likes it around Ascot, and I think 10-1 is a good value play. I could see him finishing in second or third, but slight differing opinions to get the week off to a good start for one of us. not all of us, one of us, but I'm sure we'll find some horses that we'll agree on as we go throughout the course of the week. But it's just so open, isn't it? It's a very open field to plenty of these races, I think, that this year. And when we'll get to it at the end, there's no bankers really. Really feel that we're lacking on real, like, that this is a God-living certainty at Royal Ascot, or is there? We'll get to the King Stand Stakes next, over 5 furlongs, obviously the Group 1 at 3:40 at Ascot, where we start seeing a little bit more international flavour, which makes Royal Ascot what it is. That Highfield Princess in her years in this season as a 6-year-old proved herself to be really still at the top of her A game with a fabulous second at York on her comeback run. And then we have the Aussie Challenger, the 3-year-old Coolangatta, 3 in Australia, I think it is, but 4 here, I think that's right. Just based on the way that they age their horses. Dramatised, the 3-year-old, but really younger than Coolangatta, is also in here, gets a lot of weight for age. Then you've got Mannequin, Cannonball, another international runner, Twilight Gleaming for Wesley Ward, and then Twilight Calls, who run a massive race to finish second in here. We could go on and on and on, but TC, I'll start with you first because we have seen some excellent international runners. Nature Strip took my breath away last year. I think he was the performance of the week. Do we have a Nature Strip in this field?
Probably not. And just the mention of that race last year haunts me after Golden Pal. I didn't kind of stall that it was game over, and I was cursing in SBK Towers. I don't think we've got a Nature Strip, but I also don't think it's a very good race in general. Like, I don't think there's a standout or even a proper. I mean, Highfield Princess obviously is very good, but I don't think she's amazing. And I also think she's very beatable. I do. And now here's a stat. Here's a stat for you. It's like, I think you're putting up Highfield Princess. Little spoiler. Are you as well, Ross?
No.
Okay, good.
Okay.
When was the last time a filly or mare older than 3 won the King Stand?
No, that's a good one because I can call out Lady Aurelia, but she was 3.
She was 3.
Yeah.
The answer is Miss Andretti back in 2007, so 16 years ago. Now, when was the last filly or mare older than 3 from the UK or Ireland? Because Miss Andretti was obviously Aussie to win the King Stand. The answer was 2001. The trends are not there for Highfield Princess. I think she's been below par on her last 2 starts. She's 0-3 in Ascot Stakes races. I don't like it at all, especially at the prices. There are 2 horses that do interest me. Mannequin is one. He's interesting back on quick ground. Poorly drawn last time. Lost plenty of momentum, shifting his way across the track to try and get alongside the protagonist. He could run well at a price. But I'm just going to side with Coolangatta because I think she could be the standout. The key word there is could, because I don't know. Like, I don't watch Aussie racing all the time. I've seen all the replays of her, but I don't necessarily know how strong her form is. Nevertheless, she's got loads of early zip. She's going to be up in the vanguard. She loves fast ground. She gets James McDonald on board, which is a big positive. She could just burn these off, but it's a tentative selection. I will just be laying Highfield Princess, though.
I always enjoy when the international runners come over because we hear about them a lot more in the build-up because they do very public workouts. They like to talk about them and hype them up as well. There was a workout that they were very worried about, but then she did a workout at Ascot and they said that they're cooking with gas now, and she is what they've been hoping to see. It is the form thing that I was slightly concerned about. She obviously won the Black Caviar, which Nature Strip has won in the past, and beat a very good looking field, which has gone and had been frank, but Nature Strip being in that, but I think he's sort of a little bit over the hill now. So the form is slightly questionable. Also the time of year, I've had a few people saying, the insights of the Australian horses coming over at this time. I remember when Lady Aurelia came over, Black Caviar came over and she just won and she just looked a bit woolly in her coat. I'm interested to see what she'll look like and whether she still stands in that sort of same vein at this time of year for her, which is a little bit back to front, isn't it? We've got plenty of fillies. Dramatised, Highfield Princess, Coolangatta. Case could be made for all of them. Highfield Princess, let's just chat about again. My worry, which I thought you were going to say, being stat man, is John Quinn's form. I think it's 25 days as we talk since his last winner. He's running okay, but not where you want to be coming into such a important week for that string.
Over 35.
Would it concern you, or would you think it will help her price? Because I can see her price being anywhere, but I don't think it might be favourite come the day.
It's not a positive, is it? It's considered absurd. I wouldn't be as cool on her as TC is, but I looked at it and straight away she had the profile horse I wanted to take on. And then it was trying to find something to take her on with. For me, it's just a question. She's got to go and show that she can retain that undoubtedly high level of form that she showed last year. She had 10 runs last year, started in February, went right the way through to November. As a filly mare, I just want to see her do it before believing that she can. But if you wait for that, you're not going to get a price about it. If she goes and wins this, she's going to be very short price for the rest of the season. It doesn't look a deep contest though, so if she's the right price, I certainly wouldn't be laying her, and I probably will end up having her on side. Dramatised is definitely better at this trip, but I think she's very overrated. And I think it's Carl Burke. We spoke actually on the pod last week that when he talks, you have to listen, and he absolutely loves this filly. She was really impressive in the Queen Mary last year, but that was a woeful contest. Only Olivia Meralda, who finished well beaten, has got a rating of higher than 100. She's 107, but that came when she went up to 7 furlongs. Everything else, there's so many from the Queen Mary last year that rated in the 80s. So what she's actually achieved on track, I'm just not sure. I can happily take her on. I just thought one at a price was Millar. He's going to love good quick ground. He needs a bit of luck. He loves Sandown and the stiff finish there. And he was running the Coral Charge last year was really eye-catching because he got all sorts of messed around and finished like a train. I thought it was a really good return in the Temple Stakes. He was on the wrong side of the track. He switched to the even worse part of the track, and of all of those, he was the only one finishing his race off. He's guaranteed a fast pace to run at. He'll have to weave in and out, but I think he's a big price.
Okay, he's a horse. I remember this time last year. He had the world at his feet a little bit, and when he was second, was it to your friend Russell at Sandown?
Yeah.
And he had a real issue coming out the stalls, and it's just one thing I want to touch on quickly. Where do you want to be drawn at Ascot in a field like this, over 5 furlongs?
Middle. You want to be drawn middle. I think there's so many speed horses here though. Like if you're a speed horse, you're going in a straight line, and if you're not, you're probably just finding cover because there's going to be 5 abreast. So you're going to, no matter where you're drawn, I think you're going to be fine in this race.
Yeah, it's crucial.
Middle bit, it doesn't matter.
I think so.
It's crucial. I heard in a big plug to the George Bowie Royal Ascot preview. I think he said a couple of occasions, because he's got so many star 2-year-olds running, that the draw is going to be key.
Yeah. And
getting cover. And I remember seeing Royal Scotsman not getting enough cover, and that just blowing his chances in the commentary. So I think it is crucial when coming to a lot of these sprint races. So it will be intriguing to see what they line up at. But at present, Millar, he's 28-1. David Egan's already on board. Roger Varian, another trainer coming in great form. I am going to keep the faith in Highfield Princess. I absolutely adore this mare. Look, there are questions. There will be for a lot of them, but I think from a class perspective, she is the best. Yes, it's not a vintage, perhaps, race in terms of what we've seen in the past, but I think she has held the mantle as the best sprinter in Europe last year very significantly, and I think her run at Keeneland and the Breeders' Cup was pretty special, and I do think she didn't need to start the way she did last in her last run, and she showed that. And I think a lot of mares do get better as they get older. We've seen it time and time again, and sprinters do as well, especially with gelding. So why can't she be like that herself? So just the question mark is the yard form. I can see money coming for plenty of these, and as I said, Ackham Express were 200 to 1/3 last year. I'm just going to throw out Mannequin as well, a horse that I think is dependent on ground. The ground went against him when he was beaten by Overdream. He still ran a very big race at Newmarket last time, and TC's touched on him too. I think I like his chances, and he's got Frankie Dettori booked. His rides are going to be really interesting throughout the course of the week. Everyone's going to be following him around, so I can see that actually the price getting a lot shorter because of the Frankie factor for the Kingstown Stakes. So rattled through that. Coolangatta for TC, Mitbahi for Ross. I'm with Highfield Princess and some X-ray money on Mannequin. Right, heading on to the St James's Palace Stakes, and I suppose it's probably unfair to call out what would be the best race at this stage on paper, but I think the fact that we have got a 2,000 guineas winner from the UK, an Irish 2,000 guineas winner, and a very close-up second French 2,000 guineas runner-up, essentially, just making up 3 of them, and then we've got those could be anything types, could be the kind of without patrol types, the Palace Pier types in this, makes it a very good 3-year-old contest. I like the feel of it massively. And Ross, I think interesting, as you said earlier, you followed a lot of these horses, 2-year-olds, you've seen them as juveniles, you've seen them flourish into 3-year-olds. What do you make overall of the shape of the race?
I think it's competitive. I don't think there's. I mean, I'm not blown away by either the Irish 2,000 guineas form or the English 2,000 guineas form, if I'm honest. But because I think the division is weak in the 3-year-olds, we wouldn't fancy a 3-year-old going up against the older horses later in the year. It's hard to split between Paddington and Chaldean. I just still can't quite believe that Paddington had the pace to win the 2,000 guineas.
Got that wrong.
Got that really wrong. So I just wonder about the depth of that race. Chaldean is just not sexy. He just goes and gets it done. Obviously, there'll be plenty of money for him, with, as you mentioned, the Frankie factor. But we should touch on the fact, Frankie's right now is skiing, but he was pretty awful at this meeting last year in the main. And I know he's sort of an alpha statesman, but he's going to have an awful lot of pressure and excitement, perhaps in his case, just to manage. I'm not saying for a second that he won't manage that. But one of my standout 2-year-olds from last year runs in this, and it's Al Ritter. I just absolutely loved what he did in the Vincent O'Brien Stakes. He was big, he was powerful, he travelled so well. He was green when he got to the front, and then just stayed on really well to the line. Dan was a sister to Mizu, who loved Ascot. He was second to Order of St George in one of his Gold Cups. It's a slight negative. This is his first start for 282 days. You'd think that he probably had a hold up somewhere along the line. I don't think it would have been by design to have waited for Ascot. But I think that's when he goes off a decent price. I think if there is a superstar of the division in this, it will be him, because what we've seen of the others so far, they're not. Isaac Shelby would be really interesting if the rain comes, which we were just talking before we came on, but there is rain later on the day on Tuesday. So if it came in time for him, that makes him more interesting. I think on summer ground, he's not quick enough. In a competitive race, when I can't split Chaldean and Paddington, I'll go with Al Ritter.
So, considering he won a soft ground national stakes, does that worry you? And another question is the form of that race, or do you think that he's a class
he was
outside
just
of it?
a class apart of everything in that race, just a second start. I just loved everything about him.
Okay, and the ground?
Wootton Bassett's seem to go on all sorts of ground,
Yeah.
and I just think this trip, if it was 7 furlongs on quicker ground, maybe, but I think he's got enough gears to get this done.
Okay, Joseph O'Brien and Al Ritter. Dylan McMonagle, I assume, will be on it. I mean, does not dropped up. Yeah, Oisin Murphy's sitting in the weighing room.
Joseph seems to put plenty of faith in Dylan, doesn't he? So I think it would be him, and he knows the horse obviously from last year.
Okay, so isn't overly excited about the Guineas form. Miling division, it's open because from a 3-year perspective, I think Chaldean beat potentially a lot of middle distance and sprinters in the 2,000 guineas, and then Paddington, I would say that was a weaker guineas, and then I'm not too sure about the French form either, but I just like the fact that they're all lining up together because it can sort of sort out the pecking order really. But then I love the St James's Palace because years gone by, the likes of My Prospero, Palace Pier, Without Parole come in, like Cicero's Gift, like Mostabshire, who are kind of flying the ointment type. So where do you lean?
Yeah, it's an interesting race, definitely an interesting race, and on paper it should be a very good race, but it's not one that I'm necessarily rushing to have a bet in. Cicero's Gift is a horse that I'm not sure about. I'm not convinced. The rating suggests he could be quite good, and Charlie Hills is very bullish about his chance. Kieran Schumacher not so much, but I think that's just his nature. I've seen a couple of interviews, and he's not the most optimistic when it comes to horse chance before the event anyway. So maybe reading into that is foolish. He could be okay, but I don't want to back him at 4-1 in a race where you've got proper Group 1 horses. Well, this year, Group 1 horses. Winning Mostabshire was more impressive last time out than Cicero's Gift, I thought. But again, that was in a novice event, and it's much tougher here. Chaldean, fancied him in 2,000 guineas when he won, RPR of 120, he's not to be sniffed at. But I think he's just slightly above average in a weak group, like Ross touched on there. Like, it's not the best 3-year-old group. And he's a short price again, probably going to go off shorter than 2-1 currently because of the Tory factor. And he only really had 2 main rivals in that race, Little Big Bear and Auguste Rodin, both of who were just out of the back because they didn't perform. So he didn't beat very much. Royal Ascot's been around very well. But again, I think he's not a superb horse. Paddington, I don't like his head carriage. And again, I don't think the Irish 2000 is a very good race. So I can't back him. I think the value is probably Isaac Shelby. He won the superlative as a 2-year-old on good to firm ground. So I'm maybe not as worried about the ground as Ross is, albeit his recent form has come on ground with rain. underfoot. So maybe he's better with going good to soft or whatnot. But I think it should be okay. Last time out, the only reason he lost was because it was such a slowly run race. Like, he needs pace up front, and he'll get that here. The track will suit. Ground, I think, will be fine. 8 or 9 to 1, I think is probably the value. But as I say, I'm not going to put this as my nap of the week for sure.
Okay, Isaac Shelby definitely ran an absolute blinder. I just don't think the collateral form has been huge amounts to take away from. But for that reason, it's interesting. It's kind of a split. It's the current 3-year-old form, Guineas type form, or there could be anything coming out of the 2-year-old career. And that's similar with my selection, which is, I actually thought would be bigger than this, Mustabshir, because when you read the comments from John Gosden after the win at York, which was extremely impressive, it's just what I had hoped to have seen in the Craven, but he just bombed out. He was a horse that I was blown away by at Kempton. He's very, very well bred. He's a horse that I think they might have had hold-ups getting him on the grass or whatever it was before Newmarket, but they did mention that they were in a muddle about whether to go to the Britannia with the handicap doing what it would do, or ending up in St James Palace. They're in the St James Palace, so he shouldn't really be 7 to 1, and I wouldn't want him any shorter. But I do love him, and he's taking that sort of Palace Pier-esque route, isn't he? But that you could say the same about Cicero's Gift. But it's kind of one of those horses that you can't really believe it's happening. He costs, I don't know, 30,000 guineas. He was book 3. It's a horse that I'm thinking, why did we miss him by Millar at the sales? But fair play to them. Love having a horse like that in here in a sea of familiar, big owner breeder silk. So good luck to them. And the same could be same for Isaac Shelby. But I like a little bit on Mustabshir at 7 to 1. I'm bigger, hopefully, but nothing shorter. Okay, so that's the St James Palace Stakes. Differing of opinions again makes it a lot of fun. Alrifa, Isaac Shelby, Mustabshir, so going against the 2,000 guineas winners. Okay, we'll head on to Wednesday, moving swiftly on into the next day on the Royal Ascot week, and the focus is going to be on the Prince of Wales Stakes, which has had more discussion in the build-up than most races because of the Desert Crown saga. And it was just as quickly as he was in the race, he was out of it, and it's just becoming a little bit frustrating, isn't it, for punters, viewers, whichever. Frankie was essentially taking over from Richard Kingscote. Now the horse isn't running, so we don't need to worry about him. But does Bay Bridge even run? Who's the second string? Will Richard Kingscote even ride? Not sure. Does it even matter, Ross? Because Bay Bridge, I think this time last year, I remember being very, very keen on him. And I thought he was unbeatable, and he was. And I just think, you know what? No, not having it anymore. Can't work him out. He's my sort of horse that just I'm going to have to say goodbye to, because there are others in here that it's a bit on the flip reverse. Luxembourg can never work him out, and now I'm starting to believe a little bit. What do you think? As you look at me, like as mad as you were last year, putting up Native Trials to beat Baid.
Yeah, I think Bay Bridge was one we all agreed on last year, wasn't he? And he was just disappointing. I can't have him for that reason. I think he showed that his level, and he's just not quite as good as we all hoped he would be. Luxembourg's just unreliable. I don't like his head carriage, and he got an absolutely world-class ride to win the Tassos Gold Cup last time by a world-class jockey. Now, it's right more, he might go and do that again. Yeah, quite. But I think the standard of opposition is better, and I'm not sure this track is going to allow him to do that quite as easily. I'm not a fan of Adea. I think he needs to cut in the ground at this trip. Emily Upjohn, I mean, it sounds like she's going to go to the Eclipse, but if she runs here, she'd be one of my bets of the week, I have to say. I think she's got the highest cruising speed to best turn foot. She'll get a £3 mare's allowance. She won't mind the ground. I think she's a standout in this, but it sounds like she's not going to go there, so hold on to your money. And I probably would TC's selection, it says about My Prospero, if she doesn't run. I think he's been crying out for a step up in trip. And I think this has got a similar sort of makeup to the last race, in that I'm not sure you're going to have to hit a really high level to win it. I don't know there's a superstar in here. And I think My Prospero could find more for up in distance.
Yeah, it was very interesting listening to William Haggis before the lock-in. It was very clear that this horse ain't going to need it, and B, that this is a trip too short. And I think, would it be fair to say the ground was always going to be a little bit quick as well? Or was that his other runner in the race?
No, there was talk about the ground being too quick, but I think that's a load of rubbish.
Okay.
Well, he's just not quick enough, is he?
Yeah, over a mile. Yeah,
makes you look like you're wanting softer ground, when actually you're going as fast as you can, go.
So then, all things considered, finishing fourth was a pretty good run.
Yeah, I thought he ran fantastically well. Coming off the layoff, as you said, with an unsuitable race, it was basically just a pipe opener. Getting rid of that rust, targeting him at this Prince of Wales Estates. Comes into the race with William Haggis' form, now turning that corner.
Yeah.
His horses are starting to run well. He had 3 winners, I think, yesterday on Wednesday. I think My Prospero is a really, really good bet. I can't have Luxembourg. I think he's a poor Highland Reel. Highland Reel was obviously a phenomenal horse, don't get me wrong. Globetrotter, won loads of races. I think Luxembourg's very much in the same mould as him, just doesn't have the CV. And I don't think he probably will have the CV by the time he comes to retirement. But I think you've got to take Luxembourg on. And My Prospero, the way he finished that race, he finished that, the last furlong, he was the second quickest to finish. No other horse was actually picking up in the closing stages aside from him. Now, yes, you can say, he's got that proven stamina, so we expected that. But at the same time, normally horses coming off long layoffs need that first run, and if they're going to take a blow, it's going to be in the final 2 furlongs. He finished his race very well. I really like him. He's going to feature in the Napa Next Best section later on in the show.
Okay. And I do, for those reasons. William Haggis, I know he's having a good time running form, and I'm not sure how strong he was this time last year. Maybe you've got the stats, but last year I felt like he struggled a little bit. I know Candleford won, but I remember thinking they're not running as well as I thought. And I'm trying to remind myself if he has. I just can see the last 10 years when he's never had a winner in the Prince of Wales. It's just sometimes. And Baid, and obviously was slightly different. Obviously, he's a very good success with Alenker, but I failed to see a horse in this division from the William Haggis string just really blossom, and I think that's really, really harsh. But I just don't have too much confidence I would do in maybe a Maiden O'Brien runner just to.
He's taken his form to another level. He's always been a really good trainer and someone I can listen to all day. But the quality of horse he's getting has increased in the last couple of years, hasn't it? So Baid was the first really, really good horse he's got, and I think he's going to go on. Just talking about stats, he's 6th in the last 14 days. 5 of those in the last 4 days.
Yeah.
So he's really started to.
No doubt about it at all. He's also had some really, really top quality fillies. And I think the colts and keeping them and sweetening them and planning them, he's master at race planning. I would never want to say that I am downing William Haggis. It's a struggle, this one. I think I was finding it a bit trappy, and because it's sort of lacking on numbers, and I think it could cut up with the likes of Emily Upjohn and a lot of fillies in this race who aren't going to run. I can see just what you said, Luxembourg be given another world-class ride, a bit like State of Rest did last year in this, and Ryan just going out and bossing it. And not because he's the best horse in the race, but because it could be a bit of a muddle pace-wise, and I don't know if it's going to benefit some of them, but I think Luxembourg could take advantage of that.
It makes perfect sense. To be fair, you don't always have to be the best horse in the race to win a race.
And I think State of Rest.
Yeah, kind of proved that last year. He's a very good horse, but and it was interesting last time out, they rode Luxembourg from the front. Previously, he'd been held up, so it was definitely a trial to see if he can go from the front and grind out victory, much like Highland Reel used to do. He proved he could, so maybe he'll steal it. I don't know, I can't back him at price.
Yeah, look, it's funny. It's going to be really fascinating to watch this race tactically. And maybe they might all work that out. I can't see Tom Marquand going from the front on him, though, on My Prospero. So for those reasons, I'm a Luxembourg. First joined up approach from Ross and TC, which has worked in the past. So we'll see if my Prospero can deliver them the Prince of Wales. So we had a good look at that. We're going to move on from Wednesday into Thursday. We are going to get to a point where we're going to cover some of the 2-year-old and handicap selections. But obviously at this stage, we're still some time away from the even confirmation stage. So we will go into the Cold Cup with what we know at this point. Obviously, such a prestigious race, but definitely, I think we can agree, not the best Gold Cups we've seen in for some time. To think that Coltrane, again, I feel like, I'm obviously a big fan of Andy Balding, big fan of what he's done, but to think that Coltrane could be heading the betting for the Gold Cup, even at the beginning of the year, I don't even know if he'll be favourite on the day. Do you think, TC?
He's just a solid horse, isn't he? That's why he's at the top of the market. He's proven at Ascot, he stays the trip. He's won recently. He's got that. I don't know. He's not the class horse, though, is he?
No.
He's just a solid option. And generally, in races where people aren't convinced about a selection of other horses, the solid option just goes to the top of the market, kind of by default.
Yeah, when you've got a previous Gold Cup winner in here, and I know that both of you would want to talk about him, and you've got a St. Ledger winner in here too. It just kind of surprises me a little bit that he would be that price. So I think take the prices that you can for those that have got the confirmed, definite Group 1 form.
And one more thing about Coltrane, like his best RPR, I know some people don't like racing place ratings and prefer time form or whatnot, but his best RPR is 119. If you look back at the last 7 editions of the Ascot Gold Cup, only one of them has been won by a horse in the 110s, with a performance in the 110s. It's generally you need to go up to 120. So Coltrane might have to improve to win, and you don't want to say that about a favourite. Obviously, we've already touched on this isn't the best Ascot Gold Cup, so he might not have to go to 120s.
No.
But if he doesn't, he's going to have to run right up to his best anyway. So I don't know. I think you have to trust. The price is bad on Coltrane. In short.
I agree. I think we can all. The three of us, because everyone nodding their heads can see it, especially as I mentioned, you've got a St. Ledger winner, you've got a previous Gold Cup winner, you've got a Breeders' Cup winner as well. Is there, I'll come back to you, Ross, now, is there something that we're missing at a price here? Is the market sort of forgotten to include? And will price shorten as well, do you imagine, on the day?
I don't know about price shortening, but I'm not convinced Eldorado was going to want 2.5 miles. I know you want to St. Ledger, but that's 1 mile 3.25. It's a big difference. And okay, he's only tried 2 miles, came at the back end of the season against his elders. You probably need to put a line through that form. But there's nothing really that tells me he wants an absolute grind like this. I think he's quite a classy horse. So I'm actually going to take the two older boys and trust they'll get back to it. Firstly, Subjectivist was really, really impressive when we were in 2021 and looked like he was going to be that one that would sort of take off from Stradivarius and carry this forward. Off with leg trouble, he's clearly very fragile to train. Thought he came back with 2 solid runs in Dubai this year, improved from his first run into his second. And I just wonder, given the veterinary nature of the Johnson yard, that they were very keen to go and find a solid surface to get some practice into him early in the year in Dubai, get some fitness up. I saw an interview with Charlie Johnson the other day saying that they're taking it day by day, but you could just see that he was pretty excited about this horse. If he gets back to his best, he'll win this and he'll win it comfortably, I think. It's just whether he can get back to his best, but soft tissue injuries are always sort of easier to come back to, I think, than bone issues. So yeah, I think he's overpriced. And then Trushan, who I put a line through, was waiting to see him in the novice hurdle in November. But then I listened to the Nick Luck podcast the other day, which I think we can all agree is probably the second best racing podcast there is. And they had Alan King on there and said that they found that he had an unstable palate. He'd been to Ben Brain, who is the man for Windops, when they had the overground scope on him. As his palate flipped, it was affecting him. He stopped quite dramatically on the treadmill. So they fixed that. It's quite an easy fix. If that's done the job and that was what's stopping him, he's a big price. Because if he's only going to run on ground that they're happy with, it's slightly concerning that Alan King was so quick to. Normally, when horses run badly, a trainer will say, we'll get the wind tinkered. But he straight away went to mentally, is he a bit scarred? So there's definitely something they've seen at home that suggests this horse is a bit of a moody bugger. They said they've switched him yards from the bottom yard at Alan King's to the top yard. Just thought, in a race where, as TC said, Coltrane is a really lovely horse and they've done brilliantly with him, but he's not insurmountable, he's not a superstar. Trushan is a proper cup horse. If the Windop's done the job, I think he's overpriced, and I'm prepared to take the 2 of them against the field.
They'll want the thunderstorms that might have. This has been deja vu. They've tried to get to Royal Ascot for the Gold Cup on several occasions, and day of they've said no because of it. I can't think they'd want it for too lightning fast as subjectivist either. You would want it to be too quick, but I can't also imagine that Royal Ascot would have it anything like properly rattling fast by this day 3. And if it's still the heat that we've got, they might put a bit of water on it. I think they've been watering every other day as well. It will be TC the training performance of the year, century, if they get subjectivist to win the Gold Cup after everything he's been through. I was lucky enough to go up to Midland and see him swimming every day he does. Joe Fanning, come rain or sunshine, is on his horse every single day. Absolutely adores him, and he is absolutely flying for a 52 and just loving it. I just love seeing Joe Fanning winning races, and Charlie Johnson's really churning them out quickly too. It would really put up the heartstrings.
Yeah, it would. There aren't many jockeys that have got a better clock in their head than Joe Fanning. He's always phenomenal from the front or just in behind the speed. No matter where he's actually positioned, he's very good in his races. I just got a feeling. I have this feeling that
I love that feeling.
Subjectivist is going to win.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
It's like a feeling when you get into a house and you know it's right. That's the feeling. You're like, I love this. This is right for me.
Yeah, I just have a feeling Subjectivist is going to bounce back. They've got him ready. I like the prep. They've given him a long layoff since Maidan, which I think is very interesting. You know, the Johnsons normally run their horses a lot. I know he's had a bad leg injury and was off for 613 days, but they usually run their horses, get them really fit, and then ready for the big race. But long layoff for him, nice and calm. Last run at Maidan I thought was very good, the third. And as Ross has already touched on, that win in the Ascot Gold Cup back in 2021.
Brilliant.
He beat Stradivarius, he beat Princess Zoe, Spanish Mission.
Far better race.
Yeah, those 3 horses would smash this field. I've got to take Subjectivist. I hope he does it.
Okay. I said it would be a wonderful story. I do think it's, as you say, it's a race that we've seen brilliant stories in and around, and I like that feeling. I think Wise Eagle we need to touch on as well. What a story if he was able to come where, in the first 6, I think there'd just be tears of joy. I know SBK have done a brilliant feature on him and how he gets trained on the beach. He's owned by 7 local lads. Adam Nichols got 4 horses in training, so just good luck to them. Enjoy the experience. We talk about social runners, but he's still a second to Coltrane, and if that's the kind of the dream social runner, if it is that, but I think they think that he could run a big race.
He's a social runner. I think his form absolutely stacks up for it, and he could yet improve for this extra.
Yeah, I don't think they would need. I don't know what his rating is now, but I don't think they could have probably gone to one of those bumpers essentially with the rating that he's got. 103 could have done. The Ascot Stakes, the likes, but they want to give it a go. If you come second to the Gold Cup favourites, you may as well chance your hand. So the Gold Cup always, it is for me. I do think Eldarov has got a class element here. They've trained him to be a Gold Cup horse all year. Yes, they'll really stretch him out. Dabawi out of See the Stars now. I don't see it not happening. I just think that he's got those young legs in and around some horses that might just be, I don't know, they're just sort of good because there's not a huge amount else around. And if there's
going to switch off well enough though, quite a classy travelling horse.
Could be. I think there will be a good amount of pace around, and if Joe, that's what you'd think, that Joe will just ride the race that he did last year, which could just run them all into submission. But I just think that there are a lot of sort of older horses in there that are just in a Gold Cup, not in a vintage year, and putting up Subjectivist, as much as I rate him, it is a big ask. So I think if there's one that could be the next Gold Cup horse for years to come, it will be Eldarov. I also want to throw in, as a bit of a wild card, Echoes in Rain. I think Frankie will ride for Willie Mullins. Last year, Burning Victory was 4th in this race. And I think Echoes in Rain is probably a better mare than Burning Victory, so I wouldn't be surprised if she ran a good race at a double-figure price. So that's a really good look at the Gold Cup. I don't think we would spend so much time in the Gold Cup.
We've covered every horse, so we've got the winner. On to the next race.
I do like it's quite a fun race, so I do think you can get some value around where you can't for quite a few of them. Okay, we'll move on to Friday, and we're going to look at two of the races here, the two big Group 1s, one of the newer races of the Commonwealth Cup, the Group 1 for the 3-year-old sprinters, which I think a lot of these big operations are quite thankful this race exists now. Gives them the opportunity to create proper stallions if they've failed at the Guineas, essentially, which a lot of them have. And that's why Little Big Bear was favourite. He came bounced out of that woeful run in the Guineas to prove he was the sprinter. Sakir, also a sprinter, as we get told, actually ran better than Little Big Bear. Lazoo, also coming out of the Guineas as well. And then you've got the horses who've always been sprinters and they haven't tried to pretend they're anything else. So I suppose both of you were very keen on Little Big Bear when he went back sprinting. So
give this guy the floor.
Who wants to go?
Ross deserves the floor for this race. Go on.
I think Little Big Bear wins this, and I don't think it's even close. I think a lot was made of him looking a little bit laboured at Haydock in the sandy lane, because people he was on the best part of the track and others weren't. But I agree with that, but I don't think anyone's paid enough attention to the fact this also got struck into in the Guineas, so he's going to have missed a good few days of work. All winter, his work will have been geared around relax, wait, slower, to stretch him out to a mile, and then had a few weeks to say, go on, get on with it, quicker. He's going to have had loads more improvement to come. I didn't think Frankie was brilliant on him. I thought he was too busy waving to the crowd. He didn't sort of keep him straight and really teach him, I didn't think, in the last furlong. Ryan Moore will jump back on, I'm fairly certain. His Phoenix Stakes Demolition was just a standout performance of a 2-year-old last year. I can't get away from it. He'll stay really well, this stiff 6 furlongs of suit. He'll bounce out, they won't see which way he goes. I would just throw in Mischief Magic, who I think for an Appleby Godolphin horse has gone a little bit under the radar because they've got Noble Style in there. He was poor last time, but he needs good to firm ground. And it was only described as good, but it was softer than that last time. He was really rapid when he won the Juvenile Sprinter at the Breeders' Cup. I think if anything's going to run close to Little Big Bear, it'll be him, provided the ground is on proper quick side of good. If the rain comes and they've watered, that's perhaps unlikely to happen. But I think he was 16 to 1 when I looked. I think that's a really big price for a horse that has got speed, has got class, but is just ground dependent.
Okay, Mischief Magic, a big case for Little Big Bear. I know he went off 6-5 in the Windsor Castle last year, but he was an absolute certainty, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And that was winning at Ascot over 5 furlongs, now doing it over 6. He's a proper classic sprinter for the Aidan O'Brien lot, who've done really well with this kind of ilk in the past. 10 Sovereigns like spring to mind. But there are, like Sakir, I know you're keen on Little Big Bear as well, but Sakir ran a much better race. No other excuses came out lame. He was also a very, very good 2-year-old. They've never met each other over 6 furlongs, so it makes it a very interesting race.
Yeah, I think it's just between the two of them. Personally, I think it's a match race, and maybe that's even a stretch. I think Little Big Bear, I share the confidence that Ross has. If he turns up in 100% form, he'll win this race. Quickly mentioned Sakir before. I just give a few more factors on Little Big Bear. Actually, after the Guineas, I went on Twitter because one of my followers, was back in perfect power when I was putting him up going in towards the Commonwealth Cup, and he was like, well, I need to win the Commonwealth Cup this year, Commonwealth Cup, and he kept badgering me. And after the Guineas, I said Sakir, because I thought he ran a phenomenal trial for this race. Between the 5 and the 6 marker and the 6 and the 7 marker, he was one of the quickest in the field on splits, and he just didn't stay the mile. There are other excuses as well. So he's a good player, and in a standard year, I'd be all over Sakir. I think he's got the perfect profile for a Commonwealth Cup winner. But Little Big Bear's just exceptional, isn't he? He's a real good sprinter. Ever since his debut, he's been virtually unbeatable, aside from in the Guineas, where numerous things went wrong, struck into. The ground probably wasn't ideal. The trip definitely wasn't ideal. The Windsor Castle victory that you touched on was just phenomenal. His career best RPR of 123 is £6 better than any other horse in the race. How do you beat him? I think it's very
complicated as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
especially for sprinters. You see the footballers coming off the bus with their headphones on. Sprinters would be listening to trance, wouldn't they? Banging their heads. He actually seems, quite relaxed for a sprinter. I think he can be ridden anyway.
Yeah. Which is complete opposite to mine. A horse who's a massive head case and might just blow at one preliminary, Shaquille. And it made me think that if Mischief Magic is going to ride, and James Doyle's already run, and James Doyle's already said he's riding Shaquille, Does Mischief Magic turn up, or are they quite happy to give their jockey away?
They've used Harry Davis a fair bit, haven't they? Whether they,
Pat Dobbs has also ridden him before as well, Mischief Magic.
And are we just assuming that William Buick's going to ride Noble Star?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I just find it interesting that James Doyle would want to stay. Well, if Mischief Magic is as good as we think he is, whichever, Shaquille must be very good. And to want to stay on him and think he's got an excellent chance. I think I heard him talking in an interview, every single presenter, and I'm one of them, has mowed down jockeys to ask about their favourite ride, their biggest ride for this week, and I heard him say Shaquille being one of the stand-up ones. So I've got a lot of confidence in this horse. I think it's a classic. If he wasn't trained by Julie Camacho type of thing, it'd be much shorter. He's done absolutely nothing wrong this year. He really, really impressed a lot of people last time out, beating Noble Style as one of them at Newbury. But he does have a slight quirk, and we'll see. And we're not going to be the first or last podcast that will say this, how he'll cope with the cauldron and the big spectacle that is Ascot. Going under the arch. And it's warm, it's hot, there's so many people around. So yeah, we'll be interested to see how Shaquille gets on here. He is my sort of tentative. I'm not a big backer of anything in here. I do think Little Big Bear's got a great shout. But for the trying to make it a bit more interesting from a betting perspective, maybe might just add should have been a ring, just because he ran a great race to be fit second to Little Big Bear, 20-1. He never seems to do much wrong.
It's very solid.
The classic of Anna Gray.
Really well bought.
Really well bought. Is it Richard Hannon's horses are always double figure prices, and they do tend to run well at Royal Ascot. So I don't think we should be forgetting about him. So that's the Commonwealth Cup, which does include, I think it's fair to say, that Ross is one of his bets of the week. So Little Big Bear, big support behind him from him and TC, and I like Shaquille. I'm intrigued to see how he gets on here, and how the jockey bookings take place. Right, 5 o'clock, quite late in the day, is the Coronation Stakes for the fillies, the Group 1, where we do have, again, a bit like St James's Palace, the Irish 1000 and the UK 1000 guineas winners going head to head, but also the first and second. So we've got another clash. It's been sort of built up as one of the clashes of the week. Tahira Morge, will she be able to keep up what her positioning was from the English 2000 guineas?
No.
Very quick.
Yeah, rematch as you said, and it was a very good race in the 1000 guineas over here between Tahira and Morge, but the ground was probably against Tahira. She didn't have the ideal prep. Dermot Webb's horses weren't firing on all cylinders, as we covered in the pod at the time. Yet Tahira still touched 1-5 in running, travelled like the best filly in the race by a considerable distance, was the only filly to put in a sub 12 second furlong between the 5th and 6th furlong markers in that race, which is when they were quickening up. And she just went down fighting to a horse that was just gutsy on the front end. Maybe fitness caught her out that day, the ground. There were plenty of reasons why Tahira probably wasn't 100%. And then last time out in the Irish equivalent, she was ridden like she was the best horse in the race by about 14 pounds. It was unbelievable. Winning for speed, Chris Hayes pulled her out, went straight to the front, but job done. I think Tahira reverses this form. It should be, in my opinion, quite an easy short price double on Friday. A little bit better Tahira.
Okay, we love that. Love a TC double. They've been doing well for us this year. In agreement? Is it simple as that? Is we missing something, Ross?
I agree with TC in that I think Tahira sort of got out-fought by Morge at Newmarket, and I think Morge had the benefit of a winter sun and some prep races and perhaps fitness. But Tahira does look like she's a little bit ground dependent. And I think she's the most likely winner, but she's a short enough price. Did she see out the trip at Newmarket? Was it lack of fitness? And the only person that would know probably is Dermot Weld. So there's just enough reasons, given we don't know what the weather's going to do, because it is a typical British summer, rain 1 minute, scorching the next. On the day, you have far better grasp as to her sort of chances. But I think she should get the better of Morge. Meditate just doesn't stay. I can't believe they're going to persist with this trip. So just one at a big price, unexposed, is Electric Eyes. She was very green when she chased home Commissioning in the Rockvale. Commissioning would have been one of the fillies of the division for this year, I think. That was just Electri's second start, so there's loads more to come. On pedigree, this trip should suit. She'd probably be a 10 furlong filly in time, with plenty of stamina coming from the dam side. Should be a decent enough price, I think. And in a race where, other than Tahira and Morge, that it's pretty open, I would just take her to shake them up. I think she could be a really smart filly in the making.
Yeah, I think she is. She's one of those that Carl Burke just sort of, there's a glint in his eye when he talks about her. And I think Steve Parkin had just very openly backed her off the boards for the Guineas, and then she's had a few setbacks. So probably doesn't come in a bit like Aritha in the way that they would have wanted to have got her here. But her class might show another daughter Saini, a bit like Tahira, who's my selection in this race. I think I was so pleased to see her get her classic win because she deserved it. And I think Chris Hayes was understandably quite gutted that it hadn't happened in the UK equivalent, but it was a case of just getting her there spot on. And as we know with fillies, it's longevity, and it's they get to points at different stages, and then colts do. And
I wonder whether he thinks that he just engaged a bit early, perhaps at Newmarket, and would have been better off having one run at Morge a bit later.
I think you're spot on with what you said about maybe the trip does stretch her, and what you just said there about engaging too soon, because when she hit the front in the Irish equivalent, she immediately hit the front, went a length clear, and then it looked like she was pulling up or being closed down in the final 10 yards. So it is a slight concern, but I think this race, there's lots of speed. And, if you don't stay the trip, sometimes presenters will be like, they want a slow gallop because the horse doesn't stay, and they'll be out last or whatnot. I think a fast gallop where she can use her burst when the pace is collapsing in front of her will be ideal. If they don't go a fast gallop and she can't use that burst at the front, then stamina might become the only issue.
But then I think Morge is similar to her in that she's quite a speed-based miler too.
True.
So it's not that they don't differ.
Has more speed though.
Oh
yeah, I do. Okay, really interesting that. I'm really looking forward to hearing Morge, and potentially, we've seen it, I think it was a few years ago, it was a French filly that came over and just sort of completely surprised us all, didn't she? Watch Me, that was it.
Yeah.
There aren't a huge amount of, again, French runners, but Jana Rose is in this, whether she'll run, I'm not sure. Potentially, but I don't think there is anything else that we don't know a huge amount about that we need to learn up quickly, because that sometimes happens with Royal Ascot, especially with the international runners. Okay, and talking of which, we're going to move on to our final sort of major preview before we go to Naps, Next Best, and 2-year-old selections, because we have so much fun figuring who's the best 2-year-old at this stage. Before we do that, we're going to go to the newly named Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes. Not to be mistaken with the QE2. It's a different race.
Mm-hmm.
Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes, 6 furlongs. Artorius, who's so eye-catching in this last year, returns after a couple of runs back over at home, and he had a bit of a European campaign after running well over here in Europe. Comes back with James McDonald on board. You've got a Hong Kong representative, Wellington. Richard Gibson is trainer of this horse. He's been running against what they believe over that side of the world is the best sprinter that they've ever seen in Lucky Swanese. And then we've got Highfield Princess, potentially, if she wins the King's Stand, and the likes of Kinross, who haven't been seen since that excellent end of last year. So, Ross, because I feel like you're looking at me a little bit, I feel like you've got something to say. Artorius, James McDonald booked this year, Jamie Spencer last time. Makes much of a difference? What do you feel like how he's seemingly coming into this the same sort of vein he did this time last year?
Well, I think Jamie Spencer was booked last year because they had this notion that he sort of challenges late, and if you want to challenge late, you book Jamie Spencer. I think there's perhaps been a change of opinion. I was talking to someone who works in Australia and said that they are just working on this horse, just jumping out the gate, and they put a lot of emphasis in his training on gate speed. And that they're riding him to sort of be relentless over the trip as opposed to close over the trip. I don't think this is a deep race. I think you could argue that a reproduction of his third last year would win this. If he's found a bit of improvement for jumping out the gate a bit more timely, with James McDonald, who's just one of a handful of world-class jockeys, I think he is the horse to beat. And I think perhaps they'll make use of his stamina for 7 furlongs and just be more aggressive than they were last year. So he's definitely on the list. I'll have him on side. But I think if you're going to have him on side, you have to have Sacred on side as well. Now, she is the epitome of hit and miss. 7 furlongs is perhaps her best trip, but a fast run 6 will see her to good effect. She had to switch last year to get a run and was really flying into 5th. Was a neck behind Artorias. She's twice the price. As we just mentioned, William Haggis is hitting form in a race that I think lacks depth. I'll take 2 from last year to step up on what they did last year and finish 1st and 2nd.
Is she a 6 furlong horse though?
No, I think she's 7 furlong horse, but I think they'll go quick and on a stiff track. Stamina will kick in, yeah.
My question about her is 4 of her 5 victories have come home fresh. Like, she always seems to be phenomenal off the layoff. 42 days, is she fresh enough? Is my kind of question here.
Yeah, it's kind of sort of on the border, isn't it? A little bit. She's a filly that I've gone through a bit of a love and hate with. Sometimes when you think that she's going to do the business, she just really doesn't. And there've always been a lot of excuses come out about her. I remember William Haggis was at York. I think he said that she could be beaten at York, and she was, and it was just I couldn't really work out. I don't know what the quotes are, what reasons were or not, and maybe it was that freshness bit from July to August, which is probably the same amount of time between May and June. So
yeah, it's a slight concern. So she's very good on a day.
She is. She can get when she gets it right. She's very difficult to beat.
And you say about how he said she couldn't be beaten. You don't hear William Haggis say that very often. So she clearly shows something. I just wonder whether we've not quite seen the best of her yet.
I think she seems to be. She's probably like a lot of these very good horses, a very, very good workhorse. She is very penalised. She's very penalised. She's very special. But let's just see, wait and see with her. She's watching brief for me. Anything stand out for you?
No. I fear the 2 at the top of the market, the Aussie horse, Artorias, as Ross has already said, ran very well last year. The Hong Kong run is very interesting, Wellington. I think you've got to respect any Hong Kong sprinter, as that is their forte, whereas it's not necessarily ours. If I was to have a bet in the race, it's got to be the old lovable Rohan. Just a horse that I have to bet every time he runs at Ascot. Dave Evans has quite clearly primed him for this race. He's got a naturally high cruising speed, and if they go fast up front, he's going to be travelling in behind the speed. Need to cover, we'll get that here. There's a good pace to aim at. And Rohan won the Wokingham in 2021. He won the Wokingham in 2022.
Yeah.
He's going for a 3-timer at Royal Ascot. He's 4 from 6 at Ascot in general. I can't ignore him. But does he have the quality? I don't know. But I love watching him. He's a fantastic horse. And there are very few things that give me as much enjoyment as seeing Rohan coming out on the snap with a furlong to go.
Yeah, I hope and wonder Ryan is back on again, because he gets on with this horse really well. I remember in 2021 when he won the Woking first time, and they were gutted that he couldn't run in the Commonwealth because he's a gelding. I think they just feel like he deserves a Group 1 go. He's the horse that has held his own in Group 1 level, isn't he? And very, very well too. So 12-1 in abouts, I can completely see that for Rohan. But the very big price, I think, considering what he achieved last year, is Kinross at 10-1. So reason why am I going mad? Layoff? Do you not think he's just been primed for this?
Potentially, but if you're facing race fit rivals, like even if your connections think you're 100%, you can never get a horse 100% fit at home, and you're facing like battle-hardened sprinters from across the globe. And I don't know. I think 10-1 is probably fair rather than a good price, in my opinion.
I think he's gone well fresh in the past, probably not in this kind of style of race.
Exactly.
He built up to his level last year as well, didn't he? He was very well campaigned last year.
Also, is he not an absolute 7 furlong horse through and through?
If Sacred is, Kinross might be as well, so it's fine. We'll see who wins.
Yeah. Match bet.
Yeah.
Match bet going
He's
on.
going to finish 4th and 5th.
Yeah. Okay, that's the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes. That rounds off our look at the major races, but possibly my favourite part of this, because I've been looking forward to this, is who's the best 2-year-old going to Royal Ascot? Ross, take it away. But before we get into it, because I know obviously Ross has done so much work on the 2-year-olds, I do think we all have enjoyed the 2-year-old division this year. It's been a lot of quality. It's good. They're going to be big field sizes. Everyone thinks they can have a chance in the Windsor Castle. I think having American horses over makes it a lot of fun, and we'll go into that as well. So I'd just say, Ross, it's been probably quite difficult. Has it been quite straightforward for you? There have been some standout horses from this division.
You say enjoy it, and I have enjoyed it because I think there's some really, really nice horses in this year's 2-year-old crop, but it's then very difficult to try and discern between who's absolute top-notcher and who's just below. I think Soprano is not on my list. I think maybe you guys are going to mention that. I think she is the standout performance across Colton for this I've seen this year, but the price will reflect that. The Coventry is very competitive. I really respect Sadner from George Bowie's yard. But that form, I mean, you have to trust your eye. He was miles better than them, but nothing that's going to run out that race has done anything since, including the second, who was 8th on his next start. And as a result, he didn't have a race. He just had a really nice piece of work on a race course. In contrast, River Tiber has been running over 5 furlongs. He's had to work quite hard to win because his pedigree is not 5 furlong pedigree by Wootton Bassett. I like the fact he's had the 2 runs versus Sadner's 1 run. He's going to find loads of improvement for the stiffer track and 6 furlongs. I'd be really disappointed if he doesn't win the Coventry Stakes for Aidan O'Brien. And then one in the Queen Mary. Now, it's Porta Fortuna, and she's actually half the price for the Albany, which is, I think, probably where they're going to go. And I really hope they listen to this podcast and don't, because I think the 6 furlongs at Ascot is going to stretch her. She was really impressive in a Group 3 last time, travelled so powerfully, and then just this explosive turn of foot that took her to the front. But I just felt like she was treading water the last 100 yards. I think if they bring her back to the 5 furlongs, she can use that speed, use that change of gear. 5 furlongs, stiff 5 furlongs would just be right up her street. So if she runs in the Queen Mary, Porta Fortuna, but I would be against her if she ran in the Albany. One that I do like in the Albany, just that ties in with Porta Fortuna, is the horse finished second to her in Ireland, Michael O'Callaghan, Navassa Island. Unusually for a Michael O'Callaghan to be and a horse that's come from the breeze ups, she was quite green. She took a while to cotton on when she was asked for her finishing effort, but once she did, she flew home. I think Soprano is the standout in the Albany, but Navassa Island could perhaps serve it up to her.
Okay, a question I always ask at this time of year is, do you think the Irish 2-year-olds are slightly better than the English?
No, I think as a collective, I think the UK form amounts to more. But I just like how River Tiber's been campaigned. They put a bit of speed into him, put a bit of grit into him. He's had to work, and I think you can't underestimate that going to Ascot in a big competitive field. Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to seeing him in person and see how, because he's got that massive big chest, doesn't he? So much space between sort of
not
the heart and
to Little Big Bell.
Yeah, exactly. So much going on there. So looking forward to seeing how much he sort of stands out in the paddock. Okay, so we've got the best of this very strong bunch from Ross, and looking forward to hearing what TC thinks.
Yeah, I only won 2-year-old at this stage. I like to wait until the day before and then get my proper eye in on the 2-year-old races. I tend to stick to the handicaps and the proper Group 1 races at this time. And that horse was Soprano, that Ross has already mentioned, in the Albany on Friday. George Bow was very, very keen on her before her debut. Did an SBK betting zone stable tour. Soprano was listed as their best 2-year-old at the time. She proved him right by winning a Newmarket, beating subsequent Hilary Needler winner Midnight Fair, form giving her a real good boost in the conditions race. Fortunate enough to go to Newmarket on Tuesday when she worked alongside a Sadner. George, after that, said that...
Brave thing to do, by the way. Yeah.
George said a Sadner was the horse that really caught his eye from the work, but I was taken by Soprano more. I thought she outworked a Sadner. Maybe George knows more than me, maybe not.
Do we know the weight who was riding which?
Yeah, so I listed Conor Planis, apologies for my Twitter followers, listed Conor Planis, but it wasn't. I think it was Charlie Edry. And it was William Buick on a Sadner, but Buick's riding both horses at Royal Ascot. I thought Soprano was better, so I'm backing her in the Albany.
Okay, and look, Soprano has sung her in tune, hasn't she? She was very, very good very early on in the season. Form is working out, and that's the thing. It's very difficult to really throw any any spanners in any of some of the form that is going. I agree with Sadner. I don't think there's a huge amount, but it doesn't really matter when they're training so far apart, and he's got the best speed figure of any 2-year-old in I don't know how many years. I think it's Ali actually went on and won the Coventry. So
I think the only danger with Soprano's form is you can't read that defeat of Midnight Fair literally, because Midnight Fair could have got much closer with a clear run, which he probably got last time. So
on that though, Danny Tudhope was, after he won Hilary and Ela, he was asked by the interviewer, I can't remember who it was, why you were unlucky last time, and he said we would have got closer, but I don't think we would have won. So Soprano was, even in Danny Tudhope's, what you could say could have been a biased opinion, she was the best horse in the race.
Yeah, no, accepting of that as well. Okay, well, I am going to go against Soprano. One of the horses that I'm most taken by, just by performance, by greenest, by shouldn't have won, but she did, was Jabara. She won a very similar contest at Newmarket a couple of weeks later. She's Roger Varian trained filly, who actually won the Albany a couple of years ago as well with the same horse that won the race. The name escapes me. Jabara won the same novice race as his filly that went on to win the Albany. And I just like the way that it just didn't work out for her at all, and she ran on very strongly. Now, they won the races in a very different manner, and that's why, but they did it in a style that really caught my eye, so that's why you can't separate them price-wise. I just like the look of her physically as well. Again, really interested to see how they look in the paddock, but physically she looked like a filly that's probably gonna do better. Shouldn't not have won that race, but still was able to. I also agree with Ross that it's always nice to see a horse run maybe a couple of times coming into Ascot, with it's just the experience behind them, but didn't seem to be too much of a bother for Brad Sell. My other one, and I'm pretty certain he might even just end up being my nap of the week, is Elite Status in the Norfolk. I think it's the world's worst kept secret at this stage that his performance in the National Stakes was mind-boggling. He loved his attitude. I love the way of going. A horse called Coverdale did this yesterday at Haydock, having his head as low to the ground as he can do. For me, it's a genuine quality. It's a horse that is doing as much as he can and is so willing. And the Havana Greys are really throwing that into him, into their progeny. But it's what Carl Burke has said. But this, is he just trying to rib all the other trainers in the paddock? This horse wasn't even 100% spot on for the race. Like, please, I mean, honestly. But I've got a great feeling about this horse. He's just a classic 2-year-old. And a bit like Dramatised last year, Carl Burke was so keen on him, and I think he can beat the American runner that has clearly got a big name around him, being who he is, being out of Lady Aurelia. But I do like Elite Status in the Norfolk, and as I mentioned, Jabara in the Albany. So those are our 2-year-old selections, and what is definitely the most fun to work out. So looking forward to that as well. Next, we're going to go to the NAP and Next Best selection for the meeting. Obviously, interesting at this stage because we don't, like, the handicaps are still sort of getting through them, who's going to get in, who's not. But I feel like there's one that you have been waiting for all season, Tom. So go for it and let us know if you're NAP and Next Best.
Yeah, so the nap I have been waiting for 12 months, which is Intelligent in the Royal Hunt Cup on Wednesday. Currently available at 18-1 best price. I think that's phenomenal. Anything double figure is a really good value play. He ran fantastically well in this race last year, off £1 higher than he's racing off this time around. The only horse to beat him in the Royal Hunt Cup last year was Dark Shift, who was very well handicapped, went on to finish third in his next start, off £6 higher in the international handicap, an equally good race. It seems very clear to me that Jamie Chapelheim has just aimed the last 12 months around this race and this race only. Definitely needed his comeback in the Earl of Sefton behind Ottoman Fleet, who's a group horse. And he was given a very tentative, we'll use the word tentative, and patient ride last time by Holly Doyle. There was no ask for maximum effort until 100 yards from the line, and he was flying when he hit the post. They found all kinds of trouble as well, which didn't necessarily need to. As I say, he's £1 lower this time around than 12 months ago. Back at Ascot, which is his ideal track. Big field handicap, which is what he wants. There's just so many ticks. I can't believe it's 18-1, Jess.
Okay, yeah, good price, Intelligent, and again, like the draw for Royal Hunt Cup. Okay. Ooh, that is so good. He doesn't draw anywhere.
The only thing I wouldn't want is if he's on the flank,
right?
Because then you're not guaranteed cover. But anywhere else, I'm fine with.
Okay, you've heard it here first, because it seems like lots have missed him, and that's what can happen with these handicaps. so much going on. Have you found a handicap plot job?
Have a look at the handicaps at all. My nap and next best, Little Big Bear is the nap. Little Big Bear win, Fresh Air second, and the next best is River Tiber. But don't forget Emily Upjohn. If she were to rock up, I think she's the best horse in that.
Okay, I've got some handicap suggestions, and this is again, some might not get in, some might be rerouted, I don't know, but I'm excited by them, whatever happens. My top one is New and Devon for the Britannia. He was very, very impressive at Kempton. I was there that day. I was chatting to David Egan, who just felt like he just carried him to the race like a very good horse. He beat some good horses as well. He's gone up a significant amount in the handicap. I think he's 95 for the Britannia, which is a pretty good level. He's by New Bay, so I do worry that he might not want it as quick as they'll get it. But he's a horse that ran to a very good level as a 2-year-old, and I think he's a better 3-year-old. So that's in the Britannia. And then Magical Spirit in the Woking, quite an interesting one, trained by Kevin Ryan, was third at York in the Dante meeting, which I think is a very good sort of indicator and a good form piece. If everything fails and you're getting to Friday, have a look at the Dante form and see if it's been working out. Not the Dante the race, as in the York Dante festival, because I think it's been working quite well in the shape of other major meetings, especially the likes of Epsom. So I'd be interested to see if that continues on. And Magical Spirit and Newton Endeavour, both horses that have come out of that meeting and have gone on and won. Well, New Endeavour has. Magical Spirit ran a very good race to come third. And then the last one, just one more, is Ellen for Ed Bethel, who I think is a trainer who's going to have a good week. He's got his first group of horses heading to Royal Ascot. He's going with a hugely impressive strike rate at the moment. He had a couple of winners yesterday. He's got Ellen in the Sandringham, and she's a filly I was very impressed by when she won in the Sunday Series. They could have kept her going in the Sunday Series and won a bit of good prize money, because I think if you rack up a few wins, you get good prize money, but they clearly think she's good enough to head to Royal Ascot. And the Sandringham is a case of, are you still well handicapped enough? And I think she could just be, if she just gets in. So those are my selections. In what I'm sure, as we get to the closest to the weekend, maybe a quick moment to say, if you've got daily podcasts, you've also got plenty more content coming, so as we get close to the time, well worth keeping an eye on what you guys are producing.
Yeah, absolutely. Daily podcast, looking forward to those. Written content on betting.getsbk.com, or you can probably just see it by my Twitter. Can I just drop in the next best? Because I didn't mention next best.
Oh, go for it, of course.
My Prospero in the Prince of Wales Stakes on Wednesday. We've already touched on the race, so I won't go too much into detail, but I think he should be favourite. It's going to definitely be suited by the step up and trip.
And I've got one more, not a handicap, but just a race we didn't mention, the Duke of Cambridge on Wednesday. Jumbly is the 9-4 favourite. She was second last time to a horse called Just Beautiful, who, to my eye, beat her comfortably. I think the market is making too much of the fact it was Jumbly's first run versus Just Beautiful's second run, and that Jumbly had to switch. But she came to close in the closing stages, and Just Beautiful went away from her again. Just Beautiful is 9-1. It just cannot make sense of that at all. I think they should be far closer in price, even if you do take the view that Jumbly might reverse the form. 9-1 is just far too big. She'll cope with good to firm ground. She won the Scepter Stakes for Ivan Cartago last year on good to firm ground over 7 furlongs. So a mile on good to firm wouldn't be a problem if it turns up that way. I thought 9-1 was a way too big a price.
Okay, brilliant. So thanks for that. Thank you for joining us for this Royal Ascot preview. We've gone through all the biggest races for the week, but we have to let you know of the George Bowie preview, as that is a trainer that's going to have a very busy Royal Ascot indeed. He's got a couple of favourites for some of the juvenile races, and SBK have been lucky to go and visit him in the run-up to the week. So make sure that you check out his preview on our YouTube channel, where you can get plenty of other content as well. A reminder that all new SBK users get £30 in free bets when they sign up and bet £10 for the first time. So make sure you avail that offer as well. And we will be hoping that you have a very successful Royal Ascot.